As part of a research project, myself and my family, we spent 2 years in this northern part of India northern part of the subcontinent, called Punjab, which is split across India and Pakistan. And so we were in this place called Lahore in 2008. And this part of the subcontinent was split into two in 1947. And as part of that split, the Muslim population transferred from the east side to the west, and the Hindu and Sikh population transferred from the west to the east. So in 2008, when we were in Lahore, we came across Bhai Jang. And those of you who kind of may have looked at his name, if you notice his name, it's Bhai Ghulam Muhammad Jang. And Ghulam Muhammad are sort of Muslim names, and Bhai and Jang are Sikh or Hindu appellations. And when I met this guy in 2008 in Lahore, we were at a concert at the Human Rights Commission in Lahore, which is a very nice theatre. My daughters, who were 4 and 7, were fighting with each other. They were terribly bored. There were speeches going on, and they were just like, why have you brought us here? Parents, typical. And then Bhai Jang came on, and he started singing, and immediately they went silent. And I'll show you what he was singing in a minute. And when they went silent, we all went silent because we were wondering, what is he singing? And what he was singing was verses from the Ard Granth, or the sacred texts of the Sikhs. Yet, Bhai Ghulam Muhammad Jang himself is a Shia. He would call himself a Muslim if you asked him what his religion was. And so this became a little bit of a puzzle, because how could someone who ostensibly Shia, and what that means, we could debate or discuss, how was he singing these words? How did he know what these words were? You've got to think now, this is 2008, we're in Pakistan, it's been 60 years since partition. There are maybe around 30,000 Sikhs now in the whole of Pakistan, and they're concentrated in a very small part of the country. Where did this guy come from? And actually it was a journey into finding out who he was, what he represented, and what kind of world he came from that led me to write this book. The book really is about his life. Well, in a sense, it's about what he represented, not so much just his life on its own, but what the larger world which he came out of. The inspiration behind it. And in one way, everybody when I was in Lahore used to say, oh, he's the last of his kind, he's unique. And actually, he is the last of his kind, and he is unique. But not because of what he could do with the text. What he could do with the text. Lots of musicians used to have those skills. They don't have those skills anymore. They don't have access to different types of religious texts, if you like, or different forms of sacred religion. So when we talk about Qawwali, we have this idea of this great tradition, which is 1,000 years old, that starts in Delhi at Nizamuddin Aulia, and then there's this tradition of Qawwali, which all Qawwals somehow come from. Well, in Punjab, they don't all come from that tradition. Actually, most of them come out of the local musicians, and at some point, and actually, this is where people like argue with me, in the 20th century, the 19th, 20th century, these musicians who would play at any shrine, knowing most of the texts for each of the shrines, for a sant, for a Sufi, for a guru, these musicians were forced or understood the changing climate, and they started splitting off into distinct religious groups. So you then had Sikhs playing Kirtan, Muslims being Qawwals, and then Hindus. But when people play Mir Muhammad, when Sher Khans play Mir Muhammad, they bring in all sorts of other poetry. They don't stick to the book, if you like, or the text as it's written. They bring in all sorts of their own poetry, they bring in other people's poetry. So you do still have this, what I call argue that just at the time in which religious boundaries are being formed here, classical music as a boundary between folk music is also being formed. So why music is so important in terms of religion or in terms of the sacred and secular in my book is a lot to do with all of these things that are going on about 130 years ago, late 19th century, early 20th century, is this guy, Tufel. And his biography, his personal biography, again shows how musicians play or have the ability, regardless of what their personal identity might be or whatever their personal religious affiliation might be, they have the skills and the knowledge to play music in multiple traditions. The other reason why Bhaichand existed actually in Pakistan, rather than you might have thought, well, there must be lots of musicians like this in India, is actually no, the Pakistani state neglected music and therefore allowed musicians to be, whereas the Indian state didn't. So this is a kind of funny inversion, because everybody thinks that, oh well, if you're a musician, India is the best place to go, there is so much music, there's so much money, all of this is true. But in a sense, it's a commodity, it's commodified, it's become very market driven. But yes, I am super romantic about all of this. Yes, you know, there is a tear comes to my eye when Rajguru plays this. One of the reasons why musicians affiliated to particular spiritual leaders or to particular traditions was to try and elevate them outside of their particular status within the caste system. So the text is called Hiranja, which is a 18th century, very long poem written in a kind of a poetic form called a kissa. And the famous version of this poem is by a guy called Vaishya. And that text is very, very central to this musical world in which boundaries are crossed over.